911. What is your emergency?
Ma'am, there was a shootout in my house. I don't know.
Is there anybody else in the house with you?
I don't know, but I'm scared.
When 10-year-old Robin Doan woke up in the middle of the night, she immediately knew something was wrong. She had woken up to the sounds of loud gunshots and the screams of her 5-month pregnant mother. Soon, she heard heavy footsteps approaching her room. Robin rushed back to bed and pretended to be asleep, hoping that she would drift off and all she had just heard would turn out to be a nightmare. But this wasn't a bad dream. It was true. Everything was falling apart. Moments later, a bullet was fired in her direction, but fortunately, the attacker narrowly missed, and even though she only suffered a minor injury, she played dead. She then also heard the screams of her elder brother Zach, who hadn't been as lucky as she was. But if Joan thought Zach's screams meant it was all over, she couldn't have been more wrong. All that had happened was just the beginning, as the next morning would reveal the sad but painful truth. She was all alone. This is the twisted case of Robin Doan, the girl who played dead for more than 2 hours. On the 29th of September, the day before it all went wrong, the family everyone admired was complete. They had a farmhouse with different animals, they had food and shelter, and most importantly, they had each other. In the early hours of that day, Robin Doan woke up with so much excitement as she got ready for school. She had been promised a surprise, and she got it. Her stepfather had just prepared her favorite breakfast, pancakes. She couldn't hold on to the joy, and the news that she was going to be a big sister made her even more excited. Her mother, Michelle Conrad, who was 5 months pregnant, was full of happiness as she saw smiles on the faces of her family, which she called her world. Her husband, Brian Conrad, was the best. Her children, Zach and Robin Doan, were her life. She guarded her family with love and unity. Their return from school later that day filled the room with laughter as the kids played all over the house, while Brian spent the afternoon rating the different maternity clothes on his wife Michelle put on. The peaceful family, whose home was in the peaceful town of Pampa, Texas, went to bed with joy, happiness, and clear hopes for a more fun-filled day. Unfortunately, it was going to be the exact opposite. At around 3:50 a.m. the next morning, Robin woke up to thunderous gunshots and the scream of her mom. She was distraught and scared as she sat, still wondering if she was still dreaming. She saw a big flash and decided to check, proceeding towards her door to confirm what was going on. But soon enough, she heard loud footsteps approaching her room and she became even more scared. She knew she couldn't fight off whoever this was, so she did something smart. Robin immediately ran back to the bed and pretended to be asleep, unsure of what was going to happen, as she knew a stranger was standing in front of her room. The attacker then fired a gunshot at her, but luckily it hit a plastic drawer just at the side of her bed. Although she suffered pain from the little scratch the bullet caused, Robin knew she had to be brave if she was going to come out of this alive, so she remained there, ignoring the pain and not making a move. She made it as convincing as she could so her attacker left. Believing that Robin was dead, the monster proceeded to the room of Robin's teenage brother, Zach. Since Zach was awake, he was shot 3 times and died on the spot. From her room, Robin heard Zach's screams and knew she had just lost her big brother. Laying there, she knew she wouldn't see Zach smile or play with her anymore. She also remembered the screams of her mom, and she wondered if she was dead too. Was Brian dead? What exactly happened? She had lots of questions that had no answers, at least not at that time. Robin wanted her mom so badly, but she had to be strong, so she lay down there in fear, scared that if she made a sound, the strange man would return to finish what he started. She knew she wasn't alone because she continued hearing loud noises coming from downstairs as though someone was searching for something angrily. The little girl stayed on the bed for 2 straight hours. She knew her brother was dead and probably her mother was too, but she had to be brave, and she was, lying still until the early morning sun was directly at her window. By then, Robin was convinced the attacker was gone. It was quiet. She heard no gunshots or screams. She came down from her bed and went straight to the sitting room. She struggled as she refused to look into any room or any other part of the house. She didn't want to know. The truth was a little too intense for a 10-year-old to see, so instead she reached for the phone, and at exactly 7 a.m., she called 911. When the 911 operator answered, she went on to narrate what had happened in the house.
Sheriff's office, 911.
Ma'am, there was a shootout in my house. I don't know who's alive in my house.
She gave her house address and begged that she be rescued. Immediately, the 911 operator dispatched the patrol unit while the terrified 10-year-old Robin Doan stayed on the line.
I'm scared.
Where are you at?
7142 Highway 70. It's about 13.3 miles out from the bowling alley. You'll pass the house, the next one over. I have a purple shirt on. I have purple pants on. Please, can you just send somebody out here?
Yes, somebody's coming. Somebody's coming.
The officers hurried to the scene, unaware of what they were about to find. All they wanted was to help the little girl, whose voice was filled with fear. The team had so many unanswered questions in the back of their minds. What could have possibly happened? And why is the little girl the only one alive? Robin, who was still on the phone, correctly answered every question she was asked.
What's your name?
Robin Doan, my parents are Conrad and Brian Conrad.
You don't see any other vehicles or strange people around your home or anything?
No, ma'am.
You didn't see a car drive off of any kind?
No, ma'am.
The 911 operator wanted to get as much information as she could from Robin while also trying to keep her calm and reassure her that she was safe.
I can't believe it.
Okay.
When Robin was asked if there was still anyone in the house, she replied that she thought she was the only one still alive. Robin didn't want to think about anything. She wanted her mom, her pillow, and her blanket. She was scared, but fortunately she was getting the help the police could offer in such a situation. It didn't take long before Robin heard the sirens of the patrol cars, and a few minutes later she saw the police vehicles. Packed just at the driveway, Deputy Sheriff Chad Brooks came down and immediately saw a young girl running towards him. He hugged her and tried to comfort her. She was distraught but began to give a detailed explanation of what had happened that night. Unaware of the dangers that could still be around, Deputy Sheriff Chad put Robin in the patrol car and locked it before joining the team of police officers who made their way into the apartment. As they stepped in, they immediately noticed something shocking. The east door to the residence was kicked in. Initially, it was thought that it might be a case of robbery, but that thought changed when they found everything inside the house in perfect shape and place. Everywhere was arranged and nothing was stolen. The coffee maker was even set for the day. Still confused, they strolled down the room, searching for clues as to what happened. It soon turned ugly when they entered the master's bedroom. There they saw the body of Robin's stepfather, Brian Conrad. Brian had been shot 3 times. Beside him was his wife and mother to Robin, Michelle Conrad, who had been shot 6 times. This was tragic enough, but was it all? Sadly, it wasn't. They proceeded to check the other rooms. They found Zach, who had been shot 3 times, lying lifeless. When they got to Robin's room, they saw a gun shell on the floor. Tracking the events, the attacker had shot at Robin, who was lying on her bed, but somehow the bullet landed in a plastic drawer that was just next to the bed. At that point, they realized that Robin Doan was the only survivor in the family. No other person had survived. Even their dog, Molly, was shot twice. It was even more distressing as they found no clues, no fingerprint or DNA. What they were left with was just the shoe and tire tracks of the possible murderer. After all he had seen, Deputy Sheriff Chad felt weary, but he thought it best to comfort Robin. He approached her and asked if there was anything he could do for her. The little girl gave a rather decent but distracting answer. She asked to feed her animals.
You know why you're here today? To talk about what happened this morning. I really don't want to go to sleep anymore. Okay. It makes me to where I'm too scared and I really don't want to go to sleep. Okay. Okay.
Robin wasn't ready for the truth. She hoped her mother and stepfather could walk out of the apartment the way she did, but she also didn't want to know if it was going to happen or not. After she had fed her animals, she went with Deputy Brooks to a children's application center. She was kept in a room with microphones and cameras, and there a woman questioned her regarding what had happened. She was still scared but went on to give as much information as she could. When she was asked if she had seen the person, she responded that she wasn't sure, but she saw a white face.
I don't know this for sure, but I thought I saw a white eyes. Okay. White face. Okay. Yeah.
If they were ever going to get the criminal, she was the only one who could be of help at this point. When asked if she heard shots and how many shots she heard, Robin responded precisely. She didn't hesitate to say 15 shots.
She never hesitated in her answer of 15 shots.
I saw a flash. And so I had to pretend like I was dead 2 hours. I can't talk about it. Okay. It's too heartbreaking.
This clicked as officers found 15 gun shells at the apartment. As investigations continued, the police had so many unanswered questions. Who did this? Why this family? Where could this person or these people have come from? Officers in Pampa, Texas were devastated, confused, and unsatisfied. What they didn't know was that the answer to all their questions lay in a crime committed in another state 14 hours earlier. It turns out that while Robin and her family were laughing and sharing jokes the previous day on September 29, 2005, another family in Missouri was gunned down. Around 2 p.m. on the 29th of September, 70-year-old Orly McColl and his 47-year-old daughter-in-law Dawn had just come back from grocery shopping when they met their end. They didn't have the chance to scream or fight for their lives. Their shopping bag was still in their hands when their lives were snatched from them. The murderer left the crime scene without any care in the world. No remorse was felt, and later on, he stated that this killing brought a sense of calmness to him. The case only became known the next day around 10 a.m. shortly after Robin had been rescued from her home in Pampa. During investigations, it was discovered that this crime wasn't like the one in Robin's home. It wasn't robbery. It was in fact an execution. They also found out that Orly McColl's truck was missing, and this gave investigators something to begin with since they found no DNA or fingerprints at the crime scene. The red Dodge pickup truck was immediately entered as stolen in the nationwide computer system. This was a good start, but the future promised more. Soon they noticed the peculiar shell casings of an AK-47. Luckily, a deputy who was handling a lot of crime cases was present and immediately remembered that a case of stolen guns was reported earlier on the same day as McColl's murder. He revealed that Mr. Scott King, a resident, had reported that when he was out, his son Levi King broke into his home, went to his gun safe, and stole some of his guns. At this point, the officers connected the double homicide to Levi King. Their suspicion grew even further when they noticed that Levi King was missing. Levi King wasn't an angel. In fact, he had been previously arrested for burglary and arson. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison, but only served 3 before he was sent to a halfway house. He then escaped and was on the run 1 week before the McCool murders. Knowing Levi's history, it didn't take long before he was declared a suspect by the police. Born in the quiet town of Prineville, Missouri, Levi King was born in 1982 to a family of 6 siblings and a father, Scott King. There was and still is no information on his mother, but his father, who was present, wasn't exactly the loving type. With no sewage, electricity, or running water, Scott King raised his kids in the most dodgy of houses just outside of town. It became normal to hear the sound of automatic weapons being fired from the King's house. The police were even terrified to go there. Levi and his siblings lived in constant fear of their violent and unpredictable father. Soon, it started taking a toll on Levi, and combined with his destructive mindset, he quickly started showing signs of antisocial behavior. At the early age of 4, Levi set his sister's curtains on fire just after an argument. Levi was constantly forced by his father to gun down his pet animals. He even began drinking alcohol at 11 and started doing drugs at 13. It's very unfortunate that these behaviors were all a result of his father's mistreatment of his kids. The crime in Missouri had a suspect, while that of Pampa, Texas still remained with no clues, suspects, or even leads. Soon, the Missouri crime scene investigation team heard that Levi King had been spotted. Levi was found in the truck by the Border Patrol in El Paso. He also admitted to having guns in the car, and it only made things worse for Levi, who was already a suspect. They concluded that Levi King committed the double homicide. He was arrested for questioning, during which Levi admitted to killing both Orly McColl and Dawn in their home in Prineville. He had shot Mr. Orly McColl just once, and according to him, he wanted to leave but met face-to-face with Dawn McCool. When asked why he took the life of the innocent woman, he said he was frustrated and frightened.
If you walk by to the door and you see this woman, why, explain to me why you shot at her.
I was scared. I didn't know what was gonna happen to me. I was panicking.
While the authorities locked up the case of the McColl's murder with Levi's confession, the case of the Conrads grew cold. For weeks they had no lead, and it only made little Robin more scared. She thought the person who killed her family would come back for her. She prayed justice would be obtained, and eventually it was. While officers grew more confused and weary of the case, they got some enlightening news. It turns out they already had the murderer, and it was no other person than Levi King. He confessed just 2 weeks later after he was imprisoned for the murders of Orly and Don McCall. What was concerning was the way he confessed. He wasn't bullied or even asked, he just woke up and requested to see one of the deputies he had befriended during his time in prison. He was led out of his cell into a spaced area and immediately he met with the deputy. The first thing he said was, "You know, there are 4 more in Texas." Then it clicked. This was a killing spree. It turns out that on September 29th, Levi entered McCall's house in Prineville and killed Orly and Don McCall. He then took their pickup truck and drove for 14 hours across to Oklahoma in Texas. He was at Pampa when he felt the push to kill again, and sadly, that was when he located and broke into the home of Brian and Michelle Conrad. His testimony was very disturbing. What exactly could be the cause of such an unnecessary and wicked decision? When asked why he did it, Levi said it was because he was angry at his dad. He talked about his very disturbing childhood and how his father played a role in every bad thing that he did. It would have been easy to believe Levi's account, but his other siblings didn't exhibit similar psychopathic tendencies. They grew up the same way and under the same circumstances, but they didn't let themselves be soaked into criminality. We can't deny the fact that his father's cruelty played a role, but Levi King had done all this because he chose to. On April 18, 2008, Levi King was to be sentenced. He was provided with options based on whether he pleaded guilty or not guilty. He knew he stood no chance, so he pleaded guilty and agreed to the 2 life sentences for the McCall murders just to avoid the death penalty. He began serving his time in prison, and 1 year later, 4 years after he killed Michelle, Brian, and Zach, he stood trial again. The trial began, and this time, the DA refused to take the death penalty off the table. October 6, 2009 was another tough day for Robin Doan. The teenager who was just turning 14 was going to come face to face with the monster that murdered her entire family for no reason. She was to testify before the jury, and this meant she had to relive the happenings of that tragic day. Initially, she avoided looking at Levi's face, but then she knew she had to look at the murderer and show she wasn't weak.
I tried to avoid looking at Levi King as long as I possibly could, and finally I couldn't resist the urge anymore because I wanted to see who had actually done this. And so I looked at him, and the stare that I got back was the worst feeling of my entire life.
In the course of her testimony, she broke down in tears as she remembered the terror she quietly endured that night, the loud gunshots, and the screams of her mom. She recalled how scared she was when she was shot at and when she knew she had lost her older brother, Zach. She then did something shocking that left everyone in court surprised and even more emotional. She looked up at Levi King and said, "I have endured all this, but I won't let you take my life away from me. I won't give you that kind of control over me, so I forgive you, Levi King." This was very emotional, and it had a very big impact on the sentencing of Levi King. To Robin, that was her piece. That was following the teachings of her parents, but it didn't dispute the fact that Levi King was a monster. Lynn Switzer, a prosecutor in the case, stated that she believed that if there was ever a case where a man deserved to die, it would be Levi King.
If there was ever a case where a man deserved to die, it was Levi King.
After 7 hours of deliberation, the jury came back with their decision. They found Levi King guilty and sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the murders of Zach Doan, Michelle Conrad, and Brian Conrad. That wasn't all though. Robin needed more. She needed to feel safe, and she was given exactly that. To the relief of Robin Doan, Levi King was extradited from Missouri. Robin still had to endure the loneliness and pain she had to go through at such a tender age. She wasn't okay, but she was strong. She had to live with the inescapable torment that came with her exiled loved ones' birthdays. She struggled with her mom's wedding anniversary date, and anything that showed a connection to the family Levi King took away from her. Fortunately, she was not alone. She moved in with her father, a surveyor, and his new wife, who lived just outside of Pampa. While Robin never forgot her family, she enjoyed the comfort, love, and care that came with her new family and her newly found friends. She kept a very close relationship with Deputy Chad and even invited him to her 16th birthday.
When she turned 16, Robin invited me to her birthday party.
She said she would always run to hug him each time she saw him, and that it reminded her of the first hug she gave him back in 2005 when the tragic event happened. A hug of peace which stood as a safe space for her. She initially stayed out of school for a couple of months, and when she went back, the other kids didn't know what to say to her. Everyone knew who she was and what had happened. The good news is that Robin Doan continued with school and she did well. While she was in school, she played basketball, volleyball, and softball, and also ran tracks. One time, she even became a cheerleader. Robin didn't allow her ugly circumstances to define her future. She stayed focused, hoping for even better and brighter days. While still wearing a symbol of love for her brother around her neck, Robin pushed on and graduated from high school. She then pursued a nursing degree. She said she wanted to be able to help people and babies. She loved to help, and that's what she was going to do. Even though Robin may never heal completely from the very obvious wound in her heart, she continues to go on, fighting through every battle and winning. Her story inspires whoever comes across it, whether old or young. The 10-year-old little girl who was brave enough to outsmart her attacker. Someone with courage that stood still in the face of death. Even after the trial and sentencing of Levi King, there were still many unanswered questions. What if Robin Doan didn't remain calm after she was shot at? What if the bullet hit her? What if she made her way out of that room and met with Levi? Even then, after all these, she remains calm and strong enough to face and forgive Levi at the tender age of only 14. Robin Doan is no doubt brave. Her story is one of courage and bravery, but also one of caution. Keep your family close, love them, and cherish every moment with them, because you won't have those moments forever. And that's a wrap, guys. Thank you for watching this video to the end. We appreciate the time, and we hope that you have learned a thing or two. Let us know in the comment section what brought chills down your spine. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bells if you liked this video and would love more. See you in our next video. Bye.